Have you ever looked at your tomato plants in the middle of summer and wondered why you have a giant jungle of green leaves, but barely any red fruit? It is incredibly frustrating to spend months watering and caring for a plant, only to get a handful of tiny, disappointing tomatoes. Today, we are going to change that completely. I'm going to show you exactly how to harvest twice as many tomatoes from the exact same plants. And no, you do not need expensive fertilizers or a magical green thumb to do this. I'm going to reveal a surprisingly simple method that forces your plants to stop making leaves and start pumping out massive clusters of juicy tomatoes. Some gardeners absolutely refuse to do this one simple trick, claiming it hurts the plant. But I'm here to tell you that this controversial step is the ultimate secret to a record-breaking harvest. So, tell me in the comments right now. Do you strictly prune your tomato plants, or do you let them grow totally wild? Let us dive into the secret to doubling your yield. To understand why this method works, we need to look back at how tomatoes grow in the wild. The wild ancestors of our modern garden tomatoes originated in South America. In their natural habitat, they grow as sprawling vines along the ground. Their main goal in the wild is simply to survive and spread their seeds. They do this by growing as many tangled branches as possible, producing hundreds of tiny, berry-sized fruits. But as humans, we do not want a tangled mess of tiny berries. We want large, juicy, slicing tomatoes. Over hundreds of years, we have bred these plants to produce massive fruits. But the plant still has that wild DNA. It still wants to act like a sprawling weed. When we put a modern tomato plant in our garden, it gets confused. If left alone, it tries to grow like its wild ancestors, wasting all its energy on useless branches and leaves instead of feeding the fruit. That is exactly why we have to step in. We have to train the plant to act like a modern producer, not a wild weed. And that brings us to the very first step of our double harvest strategy. Let us talk about the very foundation of your tomato garden. Choosing the right tomato variety is like picking the right partner for a dance. You have two main choices here: determinate and indeterminate tomatoes. Have you ever bought a plant, put it in the ground, and it just stayed tiny? You probably bought a determinate variety. These bush tomatoes grow to a certain height, produce all their fruit at once, and then they are done. They are great for canning a big batch of sauce on a single weekend. But if you want a continuous, massive harvest all summer long, you need indeterminate varieties. These are the vining tomatoes. They will keep growing and producing fruit until the very first frost kills them. To get double the yield, you must focus on these indeterminate giants. Because they grow so wild, they require a specific strategy to maximize their output. If you just let an indeterminate tomato grow naturally, you will get a massive jungle of leaves, but surprisingly few tomatoes. The plant spends all its energy on making green foliage instead of the juicy red fruit you actually want. So the first step to doubling your harvest is simple. Always read the plant tag or seed packet carefully. Look for that magic word, indeterminate. Once you have the right plant, you are ready for the specific techniques that will force it to pump out double the fruit. Now that you have the right plant, we need to talk about planting it. Do not just dig a small hole and pop it in. To get double the fruit, you need double the root system. This is where the trench planting method changes the game entirely. Look at the stem of your young tomato seedling. Do you see those tiny little hairs all up and down the stem? Those are actually adventitious roots waiting to happen. If those hairs touch soil, they will turn into thick, strong roots. So, instead of planting the tomato upright, dig a long, shallow trench about 6 inches deep. Lay the tomato plant down sideways in the trench. Carefully bend the top few inches of the plant so it points up toward the sun. Then, bury that entire long stem in the soil, leaving only the top leaves exposed. Within just a few weeks, that entire buried stem will grow a massive, deep root system. A plant with a huge root system can absorb twice as much water and twice as many nutrients from the soil. This makes the plant incredibly resilient during hot, dry summer days. While your neighbour's plants are wilting and dropping their blossoms, your deep-rooted trench tomatoes will be thriving and setting massive clusters of fruit. This early trick sets the absolute foundation for a huge harvest. Let us move on to the soil, because a huge root system needs amazing food. You cannot expect a massive harvest if your soil is tired and empty. Before you even place that tomato in the trench, you need to supercharge the planting area. Tomatoes are heavy feeders. They pull a massive amount of nutrients from the earth. The absolute best thing you can do is add a generous scoop of high-quality compost right into the planting hole. Think of compost as a slow-release vitamin pill for your garden. It improves soil drainage while also holding on to moisture like a sponge. But we do not stop there. To really boost those early roots, add a handful of organic bone meal or an organic starter fertilizer into the soil. Bone meal is packed with phosphorus, which is the exact nutrient young plants need to establish strong roots and early blossoms. Avoid using high nitrogen chemical fertilizers at this stage. Nitrogen encourages leafy green growth. We do not want leaves right now. We want roots and flowers. By preparing the soil with compost and phosphorus, you are giving the plant the perfect balanced diet to start its life. This creates a strong, thick main stem that can eventually support the heavy weight of double the tomatoes. So your plant is in the ground, but how much space did you give it? Spacing is a hidden secret to a big yield. It is very tempting to cram as many tomato plants as possible into a small garden bed. You might think more plants equal more tomatoes. This is a massive mistake. When plants are crowded, they compete fiercely for sunlight, water, and nutrients. None of them get enough, so they all produce poorly. Even worse, crowded plants create a trap for moisture and humidity. This is an open invitation for fungal diseases to wipe out your entire crop in a matter of days. For maximum yield, you must space your indeterminate tomatoes at least 2 to 3 feet apart. Yes, it looks like a lot of empty space when they are small, but trust me, they will fill that space quickly. Proper spacing allows wind to blow completely through the plants, keeping the leaves dry and disease-free. It also ensures that sunlight reaches every single leaf, all the way down to the bottom. More sunlight means more energy for photosynthesis, which directly translates into more sugars being pumped into your growing tomatoes. Give them room to breathe, and they will reward you with double the fruit. Now we arrive at the absolute most important secret for doubling your tomato yield. If you only remember one thing from this entire video, let it be this. You must prune your tomato suckers. But what exactly is a sucker? Look closely at your tomato plant. You have the main stem growing straight up. Then you have the main branches growing out horizontally. Right in the armpit between the main stem and that horizontal branch, a new little shoot will appear. That is the sucker. If you leave it alone, that sucker will grow into a whole new main stem. It will produce its own leaves and eventually its own flowers. You might think more stems mean more tomatoes. This is the biggest myth in gardening. In reality, that extra stem sucks massive amounts of energy away from the main plant. The plant becomes exhausted trying to support too many branches. The tomatoes you do get will be tiny and take forever to ripen. To get double the amount of large, juicy tomatoes, you must pinch off those suckers while they are still small. Just use your thumb and index finger to snap them right off. Do this every single week. By removing the suckers, you force the plant to direct all its energy into producing fruit on the single main stem. While you are pruning those suckers, you also need to look at the bottom of the plant. The leaves at the very bottom of your tomato plant are actually a huge liability. As the plant grows taller, those lower leaves become shaded by the upper canopy. They stop producing energy for the plant. Even worse, they hang down and touch the soil. Soil is full of dormant fungal spores, especially early blight and septoria leaf spot. When it rains, or when you water the garden, splashing water bounces off the soil and hits those lower leaves, carrying the disease right onto your plant. Once a fungal disease starts at the bottom, it quickly climbs up the plant and destroys your harvest. To stop this, you must aggressively prune the bottom leaves. Once your tomato plant is about 2 feet tall, use a clean pair of scissors to cut off every single branch and leaf in the bottom 6 to 8 inches of the plant. There should be bare stem at the bottom. This creates a firewall against soil-borne diseases. It also improves airflow at the base of the plant, keeping the soil surface drier. A healthy, disease-free plant will live weeks longer at the end of the season, giving you plenty of time to harvest that second wave of massive fruit. Let us talk about watering, because bad watering habits will ruin your harvest faster than anything else. Tomatoes are incredibly sensitive to inconsistent moisture. If the soil gets bone dry, and then you suddenly flood it with water, the plant panics. It takes up all that water rapidly, pushing it straight into the growing tomatoes. The inside of the tomato grows faster than the skin can stretch, and boom, your beautiful tomatoes crack and split open. Split tomatoes look terrible, and they rot quickly. To prevent this and encourage a huge yield, you must master the art of deep, consistent watering. Never water your tomatoes lightly every single day. A light sprinkle only moistens the top inch of soil, which encourages weak, shallow roots. Instead, you need to water deeply, but less frequently. Aim to soak the soil down to a depth of 6 to 8 inches, about twice a week, depending on your weather. Always water at the base of the plant, directly on the soil. Never use a sprinkler that gets the leaves wet. Wet leaves overnight are a guaranteed recipe for fungus. By providing a steady, deep supply of water, your tomatoes will grow at a consistent rate, perfectly round, unblemished, and absolutely massive. To help maintain that perfect soil moisture we just talked about, you must use mulch. Leaving the soil bare around your tomato plants is a rookie mistake. The summer sun will bake bare soil, evaporating the water instantly and raising the soil temperature to levels that actually cook the delicate surface roots. Bare soil also allows weeds to explode, which steal valuable nutrients right out from under your tomatoes. The simple solution is to lay down a thick 3 to 4 inch layer of organic mulch around the base of your plants. You can use straw, untreated grass clippings, or shredded leaves. This mulch acts like an insulating blanket for the soil. It drastically reduces evaporation, meaning you have to water less often. It keeps the root zone cool during the hottest days of August, which prevents the plant from dropping its blossoms due to heat stress. As a bonus, that organic mulch slowly breaks down over the season, feeding the soil with a steady trickle of natural nutrients. Mulching is the easiest, lowest effort way to double your yield because it creates the perfect, stress-free environment for the roots to thrive and pump energy up into the developing fruit. Now for a brilliant little trick that guarantees more fruit. Let us talk about pollination. Tomato flowers contain both male and female parts. They do not strictly need bees to cross-pollinate them. They actually pollinate themselves through vibration. In nature, the wind blows the plant, shaking the pollen loose inside the flower, causing it to drop and fertilize itself. But if your garden is sheltered from the wind, or if the weather is extremely humid, that pollen gets sticky and does not drop. The flower dies and falls off the plant without ever making a tomato. This is called blossom drop, and it destroys your yield. Here is the weird but highly effective solution. Take an electric toothbrush out to your garden, turn it on, and gently touch the vibrating back of the toothbrush to the stem just behind a cluster of yellow flowers. Give it a 2-second buzz. That high-frequency vibration mimics the buzzing wings of a bumblebee. It will instantly shake the pollen loose inside every flower on that cluster. You will actually see a tiny puff of yellow pollen fall out. Do this every few days when new flowers appear. You will achieve nearly a 100% pollination rate, guaranteeing a massive increase in actual fruit. Let us shift gears to feeding your plants during the season. We prepped the soil early on, but a heavy-producing tomato plant will quickly eat all those nutrients. You need to feed them again, but you must do it correctly. Here is a massive mistake people make. They buy a general, all-purpose fertilizer that is extremely high in nitrogen, and they feed it to the plant all summer long. Nitrogen is great for making green leaves. If you pump your plant full of nitrogen in mid-July, it will stop making tomatoes and go back to growing a giant, leafy jungle. You will get a beautiful green bush with zero fruit. Once your plant has set its first cluster of small green tomatoes, you must switch your fertilizer. You need a formula that is low in nitrogen but high in phosphorus and potassium. Potassium is the absolute key to large, sweet, healthy fruit. Look for a fertilizer specifically labeled for tomatoes or blooming plants. Apply this balanced food every 2 to 3 weeks right at the base of the plant. This sends a collect signal to the tomato. Stop growing leaves and start sizing up those fruits. This targeted feeding strategy is what turned a moderate harvest into a completely overwhelming bounty. We need to address a heartbreak every tomato grower faces at least once. You walk out to the garden, you see a massive, beautiful green tomato, but when you look underneath, the bottom is a sunken, black, leathery mess. This is called blossom end rot, and it will destroy half your harvest if you do not stop it. Now, let us bust a major internet myth. People will tell you to crush up eggshells or put Tums tablets in the soil to fix this. They say it is a calcium deficiency in the soil. That is only half true. Almost all garden soil has plenty of calcium. The real problem is that the plant cannot transport the calcium up into the fruit. And how do plants transport nutrients? Through water. Blossom end rot is almost always caused by inconsistent watering, not bad soil. If the plant dries out severely, the flow of water stops, the calcium stops moving, and the bottom of the fast-growing tomato collapses. The crushed eggshells take months or years to break down anyway. They will not help your current crop. The true fix for blossom end rot is to fix your watering schedule. Maintain that deep, even moisture with proper mulch, and the black spots will stop appearing on your new tomatoes entirely. Because we are forcing these plants to grow so big and produce so much heavy fruit, we have to support them properly. A standard, flimsy wire tomato cage from the hardware store is a joke. By midsummer, a healthy, indeterminate tomato will easily crush that tiny cage, falling over into a tangled mess on the ground. When the plant falls over, the stems snap, airflow is ruined, and pests have easy access to your fruit. To double your harvest, you need serious architecture. You need to build a strong trellis system. One of the best methods is the Florida weave. You drive heavy wooden or metal stakes into the ground between every 2 plants. Then, as the plants grow, you weave strong garden twine back and forth between the stakes, trapping the tomato stems between the strings. You add a new layer of string every 8 to 10 inches as the plant climbs upward. This keeps the plants perfectly upright, fully exposed to the sun, and completely off the damp ground. A strong trellis system prevents broken branches and keeps your fruit clean and healthy. It takes a little extra work early in the season, but keeping your plants vertical is absolutely essential for a massive, healthy harvest late in the year. Let us talk about a secret weapon that does not involve the tomato plant at all. It involves the plants living right next door. Companion planting is a powerful way to boost your yield naturally. The best friend a tomato plant can ever have is basil. Planting basil directly at the base of your tomatoes is pure magic. First, basil has a very strong scent that naturally repels several pests that love to attack tomatoes, including whiteflies and thrips. Second, many gardeners swear that planting basil nearby actually improves the flavour of the tomatoes themselves. But the benefits do not stop with herbs. You also need to plant bright flowers like marigolds and nasturtiums around your tomato beds. Marigolds release a chemical into the soil that kills root knot nematodes, a microscopic pest that destroys tomato roots. Nasturtiums act as a trap crop. Aphids absolutely love nasturtiums. They will attack the flowers and leave your precious tomato plants completely alone. By creating a diverse ecosystem around your tomatoes, you attract beneficial insects like ladybugs and predatory wasps, which will patrol your plants and eat the bad bugs for free. This natural defense system keeps your plants stress-free and highly productive. When summer hits its peak and the temperatures skyrocket, your tomatoes are going to face their biggest challenge: heat stress. When the temperature stays above 90 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and above 75 degrees at night, something terrible happens. The pollen inside the tomato flowers becomes sterile. Even if you use the toothbrush trick, the flowers will just turn brown and fall off. The plant simply shuts down production to survive the heat. You cannot change the weather, but you can help the plant survive it. If a massive heat wave is coming, you can set up a temporary shade cloth over your tomato beds. A 30% shade cloth blocks the harshest afternoon rays, lowering the temperature around the leaves by several degrees. This can be just enough to keep the pollen viable and keep the plant producing. Also, during a heatwave, make absolutely sure your soil mulch is thick and your watering is deep. Do not panic and overwater, but do not let them dry out. Once the heatwave breaks and the cooler nights return, your protected plants will bounce back instantly and immediately push out a massive new flush of flowers, securing your late summer harvest. Now we must discuss the enemy. There is a monster hiding in your garden, and it can eat a tomato plant down to bare stems in a single night. I am talking about the tomato hornworm. These are massive, bright green caterpillars, as thick as your thumb. Because they are the exact same colour as the tomato leaves, they are nearly impossible to see during the day. You will usually notice the damage first: entire branches stripped of leaves and little black droppings on the leaves below. If you see this, you must act fast. Do not bother with chemical sprays for hornworms. They are easy to defeat manually if you know the secret. Go out into your garden at night with a cheap UV blacklight flashlight. Shine it over your tomato plants. Under the ultraviolet light, the green hornworms will glow bright neon yellow in the dark. They light up like a Christmas tree. You can easily spot every single one of them. Just pick them off by hand and drop them into a bucket of soapy water. Removing these voracious pests quickly ensures they do not destroy the foliage that is powering your double harvest. A little night patrol is highly effective and completely organic. As the season progresses into late summer, fungal diseases are almost inevitable. Even with bottom pruning and proper spacing, the humidity will eventually take a toll. Early blight will show up as brown spots with yellow leaves. If you ignore it, it will race up the plant. The key to a double harvest is extending the life of the plant as long as possible. As soon as you see those yellowing, spotted leaves, cut them off immediately and throw them in the trash, not the compost bin. Then you need to apply a protective coating to the remaining healthy leaves. You can use an organic copper fungicide or a biological spray containing beneficial bacteria like Bacillus subtilis. These sprays do not cure the infected leaves, but they create a shield on the healthy green leaves, preventing the fungal spores from taking hold. Spray early in the morning or late in the evening to avoid burning the leaves in the sun. By actively managing the blight and keeping the top 2/3 of your plant green and healthy, your tomato vine will continue to pump sugar into the ripening fruit well into the autumn months, drastically increasing your total yield. Let us talk about an advanced technique that shocks many beginners. Late in the season, about 4 to 6 weeks before your first expected fall frost, you need to commit an act of violence against your tomato plant. You need to cut its head off. This is called topping the plant. Take your shears and cut off the very top growing tip of the main stem. At this point in the year, any new flowers the plant produces will never have enough time to grow into full-sized tomatoes before the freezing weather kills them. They are a complete waste of energy. By cutting off the top of the plant, you force it to completely stop growing taller. The plant senses this and panics. It immediately redirects 100% of its remaining energy down into the green tomatoes that are already hanging on the vine. This sudden rush of energy forces those green tomatoes to size up rapidly and ripen much faster. Instead of ending the season with a giant vine full of useless, tiny green marbles, you will harvest a massive final wave of large, perfectly ripe red tomatoes. Topping is the ultimate strategy for squeezing every last drop of yield out of your fading summer garden. Now for the biggest myth-busting moment of all. How do you actually harvest the tomatoes? Almost everyone believes you have to leave the tomato on the vine until it is deep red and perfectly soft. This is a massive mistake that costs you yield and ruins your fruit. The longer a ripe tomato sits on the vine, the more likely it is to split in a rainstorm, get eaten by a squirrel, or be ruined by bugs. Here is the scientific truth. Once a tomato shows its very first blush of colour, usually a pale pink or orange star on the bottom, it is fully cut off from the plant. The plant stops feeding it entirely. This is called the breaker stage. From that moment on, the tomato ripens using its own internal gases. It does not need the plant, and it does not even need sunlight. For the absolute best results, pick your tomatoes the moment they hit that breaker stage. Bring them inside and place them on your kitchen counter at room temperature. They will turn perfectly red, soft and juicy in a few days. By removing the fruit early, you take massive weight off the plant, and you prevent pest damage. More importantly, removing the fruit signals the plant to quickly push more energy into the next cluster of green tomatoes, speeding up your total harvest rate. Let us summarize this incredibly powerful system. Doubling your tomato harvest is not about luck. It is about actively managing the plant's energy from day one. You start by choosing indeterminate varieties and planting them deep in a trench to build a massive root system. You feed the soil with compost and careful targeted fertilizers, avoiding too much nitrogen. You space them out to prevent disease and water them deeply to prevent splitting. But the real magic, the absolute core of this method, is the aggressive pruning. By pinching off those useless suckers every single week, you stop the plant from acting like a wild weed. You force it to channel every ounce of its energy into producing giant clusters of fruit on one strong main stem. You support that heavy stem with a proper trellis, and you protect it from pests with companion plants and late-night patrols. Finally, you outsmart the changing seasons by topping the plant in late summer and harvesting the fruit at the breaker stage. Each of these steps builds upon the last, creating an unstoppable tomato-producing machine in your backyard. By combining all these techniques, you are completely rewriting the rules of your garden. You are transforming a lazy, leafy green bush into a highly efficient fruit factory. It requires a bit of discipline. It can feel strange to cut off healthy green leaves and branches. It feels wrong to pick a tomato when it is only slightly pink. But the results will absolutely speak for themselves. While other gardeners are complaining about a bad year and showing off tiny, split tomatoes, you will be hauling heavy baskets of perfect, pristine fruit into your kitchen week after week. You will have enough for fresh salads, enough to can your own pasta sauce, and enough to give away to your jealous neighbours. Gardening is a partnership between you and the plant. If you provide the right structure, the right food, and the right discipline, the tomato plant will reward you with a harvest beyond your wildest expectations. Stop letting your plants run wild. Take control of the growth and get ready for the best tomato season of your life. And there you have it, the ultimate step-by-step strategy to absolutely explode your tomato yield this season. The biggest turning point for most gardeners is finally understanding the breaker stage. Realizing that you do not need to leave the fruit on the vine to get that perfect, sweet, sun-ripened flavor changes everything. It saves your crop from bugs, cracking, and weather damage, while forcing the plant to keep producing. Remember, pinch those suckers, water deeply, and harvest early. If you follow these rules, you will be drowning in delicious, homegrown tomatoes before you know it. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something new today and want to supercharge your garden, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow. Now, I have a question for you to answer in the comments below. What is your absolute favourite variety of tomato to grow, and how do you like to eat it? Let's get a discussion going down there. Happy gardening, and I will see you in the next video.